Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Abby. I am in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it's really fun to see all of you guys. Like, I'm saying hi from Tennessee and hi from New York. That's so exciting. Thanks for being here with me today. And you guys please put questions in the chat box the entire time. Molly is with us, and she's going to be reading those, and she'll come off mute and share your questions with me throughout this little watercolor workshop. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because it actually takes the full hour to do this little watercolor piece. Again, put any chat or any questions that you want to in the chat box. Molly will get to them as we go through it. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the items that I'm using and explain a little bit why I choose to use them. So first, if you guys have the Arches watercolor paper, this stuff is great. It's professional grade watercolor paper. It holds up. You can put a lot of water on it, which is what I think makes for good organic watercoloring. If you don't have this, that's totally fine. If you have the paper, I'm going to show you guys how to tape it down really fast. I'm using the block, so watercolor block. So if you have this, if you did get it for this class, the fact that it's already, glued together, that's going to allow you can keep putting water on your paper and it's going to keep your watercolor flat. So this, as a reminder, this is what we're doing. And the way that I got this straight edge around, this like completely clean edge, was taping. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So grab your masking tape. And if you haven't already done this, either tape your paper down to your table or, sorry, that's probably an annoying sound. I like to tape around, even though I'm using the block and I don't really need to tape in order to make my paper stay flat, I'm gonna do it anyway because I want that clean edge. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape my paper. I'm seeing we can't see the table you're working.
Don't worry, Abby, I'm putting some tips in the chat right now.
Okay, great. If you guys if you don't have the Arches watercolor paper, as we do this today, like if you're using student grade watercolor paper, just try to use a little bit less water because we're gonna layer some colors. And I tend to use a lot of water. So I kind of like pour it onto my paper. Just maybe hold back on the water a little bit so that your paper doesn't break down. Okay, so once you're all taped up and ready to go, grab a pencil. Gotta move all my brushes out of the way. All right, so we're gonna start by just loosely drawing out your landscape. And when I say loosely, I want you to do it like super loose. So you can put a mound of snow wherever you want to. The most important thing is to make room for your sky and then room for your water. So I'm gonna create a scene exactly like this. So you guys can follow me and draw it out, or again, just create your own scene. I'm also gonna stand up when I do this. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little hill in the back here. And then I'm gonna have kind of an island. Honestly, this landscape was inspired by my family's cabin that's up in Wisconsin, and there's a lake in front of the cabin. And so it really does look like this. And there actually is a big white pine that hangs out right in front of the cabin. So I'm just gonna put the shape of the pine tree over on the left side here. I'm not sure how much you guys can see this. I'm gonna hold it up to the camera in a minute and show you how loose this is. I like to have as few pencil lines in my watercolor as I possibly can. So here, I'm going to show you guys the reference image. Okay, so basically I just sketched out this shape, and then this shape over here, and then my little mound of snow in the front. And if you look at this, oh, that's kind of hard to see, but that's how light I want you guys to try to do it. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a second to do that. You can also kind of start drawing in some of your pine trees in the back if you want to. And if you guys hear my dog whine, I'm sorry. She's sitting outside my studio door and she never leaves me alone. But that's a great thing to have this year, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this again. If you can see those pencil lines. Really, really rough sketch. Okay, so once you're there, you're gonna need a towel or paper towel, whatever you want. Then your cup of water. And if you want, have a little scrap piece of paper to test some of your colors on. And then I'm gonna go through, throughout this lesson, I'm gonna use all of these different brushes that I have, okay? So the most important ones that you wanna have is a broad, like a wider brush. It can be flat. I tend to like flat brushes, so you can have a wide flat one, or maybe it's round. Maybe it's a shape like this. These are all Derwent brushes. You can have some textured guys too, if you want to. I'm going to show you how to use those at the end.
Hey, Abby,
Mhm.
everyone's asking to see the reference picture again.
Oh,
Would you mind just putting
yeah.
it in the view and maybe just let it sit there for a
Yep,
minute or
I'll
so?
leave that there. Yeah, and I'm going to keep talking about these. And then, but we're using the paint pan travel set, which means you definitely have a water brush, which is this little guy. I'm actually going to use Derwent's push button water brushes. So I have a couple of them, all of different sizes. So the most important thing you want to have right now is a larger brush. It can either be round or flat, and then a small little detail point brush. And as long as you have those two things, you'll be able to do everything that I'm going to do. But again, I'm going to switch my brushes around because I know everybody has different brushes, and I want you guys to see that you can do this with any brushes that you have available. I'm going to leave that up there for just about another 30 seconds, 15 seconds maybe. Okay. All right, so step one here, actually what I can do, well, I'll pull it back in as we keep going. I'm gonna leave it right there. All right, so we're gonna start with the sky. So I'm gonna start out using my biggest brush. So grab whatever big brush you have and just start laying. Your first thing that you're gonna do is lay, so I want to create the yellow that's coming up over the horizon. And then just some pretty yellow swirls in the northern light sky. So I'm going to lay down my water first. And then in a second here, I'm going to put the pigment into it so that it bleeds very organically. Okay, so I've got my clear water down there. I'm going to grab some of the yellow. And I'm just going to let that bleed in. And I would encourage you guys to be super organic with this. Like I've painted this multiple times now. Every time it looks different. Every time I let the colors bleed together a little bit differently. And that's really, I think, the beautiful part about using watercolor. All right, so depending on how much water you have on your paper, Once you can learn how to control the water, that's what's going to make your watercolor skills super successful. So like right now, I've got pretty much water on there. I'm going to let that dry a little bit for a second, and I'm just going to add a little bit of reflective yellow into the water. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to follow my lines and reflect them. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. If you have any big blobs of water on your paper right now, you can kind of dab them up. But again, you want your paper to be wet. You just don't want it to be too wet so that you are literally just, muddying all of your colors. So you want them to blend, but you don't want them to run everywhere. So now I'm going to take this green. Molly, I forget what this green is called. It's the brightest green in this palette. And I'm just going to start adding that into my sky. So see how the colors are kind of bleeding together there? That's what you want. But make sure to leave some of your yellow super bright. And this is where you can start organically just going around the edges of your trees, so you can kind of see the tree shape coming into view right there. And then I'm going to go between these two and then these. We're going to let the yellow down in the water. We're going to let that dry. Okay, we're going to focus on the sky for now. All right, so now I've got some green in there. Now you've got your bright blue in this palette, which is right here on the end. And if you're not using this palette, you can use, I mean, any other vibrant blue colors that you have. I'm going to add some dark blue down into there. And then in my original painting, so I kind of have a dark sky over here, and then the yellows and the greens get more vibrant over here. So that's what I'm going to do here as well. And again, you're just going to kind of swirl it in there. One of the really cool things about the Derwent Paint Pan Inktense in general is that you can layer them. So let's say you do go a little heavy with your dark blue or your green and you're like, oh no, I want to add my yellow back in. You can do that because you can layer them. And actually, I'll do that in a second here just to show you guys. I wish I could see all your palettes right now. Or all your compositions. All right, so like, I don't know, I kind of want some more yellow in there. So I'm gonna get a little bit more. I can put some right there. See, that's the cool thing about the Inktense. Like you can literally just plop them in there and they'll be super vibrant. Okay, so I'm gonna call that pretty good. You guys could spend all day making your sky. I did say in the list of items that I recommend having today. So I want, if you, I mentioned the Inktense blocks. Okay, these are these guys. There's a set of 72 and a set of 36. I really wanted to use like a dark navy on this painting. So I grabbed a dark navy block. And it doesn't, again, it really doesn't matter what navy it is. I'm using number, I think it's 1100. And then I grabbed 2 of my turquoise blocks. And the reason I did that is because I want to create like some really dark shades in the sky. So I use my blocks exactly like I would use the paint pan set. And rather than drawing with them on my paper, I just go like this. So you get water on your brush. And then these don't blend out as much. They'll kind of stay where you put them. And you want to get some really dark shades into your sky because we're going to splatter some white later to create snow. And wherever it's really dark, that's where your snow is really going to pop. Again, you're just going to keep adding this until you are happy with your sky. Maybe your sky is super dark. That's fine. Okay. Actually, gonna add a little bit more right along here. If you put some really dark colors along that tape line, it'll give you a super nice, pretty clean edge when you take the tape off, which is one of the most satisfying parts, I think. All right, I'm gonna call that done, I think, for my sky. If you have any places, like I have a little bit of white still exposed, so right here in these yellows or in these white spots, I'm just gonna add some yellow. All right. So we're gonna let that sky dry. Now looking back at our starting point here. So now we're gonna work on the water. Then we're gonna go back up here. And once our sky is dry, we're gonna start adding all the details of our trees. But we need our sky to completely dry before we start layering on the trees and the details. So let's do our water now. You guys can see that I have a lot of greens in there. I do use a little bit of the turquoise block. You don't need that. Again, if you don't have it, it's totally fine. And then I use some of the blue again, okay? So this part should be super organic too. Basically, what you wanna do is just mirror what you did in the sky, but make it even a little bit more organic because it would be, you know, in rippling water. The other thing is I need to add water to my little water brush. I always keep a bottle of water with me so that I can do it here at my desk. Sometimes you spill it all over the place. That's okay. So that shows you guys how much water I go through when I do this. Like I used an entire water brush of water. All right, so I already have my yellow down here. I'm gonna start with adding some green. This is also where you're gonna start defining the edges of your little snowy islands out there, okay? So remember to leave any white dry. As long as you, that goes with any watercolor that you're ever doing. You want to leave your whitest whites dry so that none of your color runs into those areas. Okay, so I'm just kind of wetting this whole area.
Hey, Abby, a couple people are asking if you can pull down the example a little bit more into the camera view without getting it in your paints.
Let me see if I can, hold on, let me try to move this over. Oh, I'm taped to the table. Gosh. How's that? Is that helpful? You can see the water there, and that's what we're
That's
on.
better. Thank you.
Okay. So right now, if you guys can see where all this green is right here, I'm just gonna grab some of my brightest green and let that bleed into there. And I'm gonna kind of go around. Again, try to mirror what you did up top. So I'm gonna mirror some of this yellow that was right there. So sorry if you guys can hear my dog, that's hilarious. I'm gonna define this little island up here. Okay, now I'm gonna add in just a little bit of my turquoise. So if you did grab either one of your, or any of your turquoise blocks, I'm just gonna put them right there. I think that the blocks give you, for me anyway, that like, I don't know, just some more intense opaque color, which sometimes I want, sometimes I don't. But I think it helps to differentiate a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab some blue. So that same bright blue that you used in the sky. And I'm just gonna put that right underneath all of my little snowy patched islands. And I especially want to mirror this dark spot right here. And then just kind of call this front, there's a little snow patch that I have in the foreground here. And so I just defined that a little bit there. So once you have that, I recommend just blending all your water together. Again, you don't want any hard edges. And you could stay here for a very long time and continue to add layers. Like you could add in some more yellows. For the sake of this class, I'm gonna kind of leave it at this. At the end, we're gonna define our edges even a little bit more. Like you can see here, all of these super defined edges, those happen at the end. But for now, I'm just gonna leave that emerald greens lake the way that it is. Oh, sorry, I just knocked my table there. Okay. So now we need our sky to be dry. It's not quite dry yet. This is the other frustrating part about watercolor. You always have to wait for your layers to dry before you can add to them. If you guys have a hair dryer, you could grab it and use it. I'm just gonna kind of dab mine so that I can keep going. Okay. So we're gonna start adding in our little trees back there. There's no rhyme or reason to these. These can go wherever you want, just make them the smallest trees because they'd be way in the background. Okay, for this, you could use like a medium tip water brush. I have this really tiny tip water brush. You can also use, I love this brush. This is a Derwent brush. I know Michael's has tons of other detail tip brushes. So anything that's super thin, grab that right now. And then I'm gonna use my blue. Molly, can you hop on really? Oh, never mind. I wanna tell you guys what colors I'm using. Here's your color guide, okay? So when I keep saying bright blue, it is actually called bright blue, so I'm glad I was saying that. And when I kept using this like bright green, this, I call it emerald green, but it's teal green. So that's the other like main color used in this. So for these trees, I'm gonna start with my bright blue again.
And Abby, you're using travel pan number 1, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So now another trick. It's not really a trick. You have to do it. If you're right-handed or left-handed, it depends how difficult this is going to be. While your layers are drying, like my water is still wet, but I need to go add detail in up here. I have to make sure that my hand doesn't mess all this up. It's a real challenge, guys. But if you had more time, you could just wait for that to dry. Okay, so I'm just going to start adding my little trees in. And again, they can go wherever you want. You can do little triangles. Like these can be so organic and vague. In fact, like the fact that they are so far away from you, probably the more vague you make these in the background, the better. Molly, does anyone have any questions while I'm doing this?
Nope, so far it's all been good.
Okay. I would just encourage you, like, kind of put your trees in little groupings. Don't just like put them along the entire edge because then that looks a little unnatural. Stand up again. All right, I think I'm gonna leave mine like that. So again, this is what we're kind of going for. So just put your little trees in there. Okay, now we're gonna work on these trees right here. So I think in this one, I only have like 4. Over here, I had, I don't know, 8 trees. It doesn't matter how many you have. All right, I'm gonna use my flat brush. So if you have a flat brush, maybe you have a round brush, doesn't matter. I would say get a medium-sized brush. I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna get just a little, my paper just a little wet here. So as you add these, this is where you can start defining the edge of your tree, your largest tree that's in the foreground. And I am going to use, so my base color for these trees is going to be what is that? The racing green. It's this one right here. So it's right next to the teal green in your palette. It's just going to give you like a really dark green that'll help set your trees off from the background, the sky. My sky is still a little bit wet. You guys, I would encourage you to wait until your sky is completely dry before you start adding these. Okay, so that one I did wet on wet. So I made my paper wet and then I added the wet pigment into it. This time I'm going to show you what happens if I do, so maybe that's like my trunk. And then if you do have a flat edge brush, you can literally just like add some texture in there for your trees. And your first step in doing these is just to kind of block out the shape, add some texture. Again, this is, gosh, I feel like an hour is not enough. This is where you can get super detailed with these trees. You can like let them dry and then come back and add more detail. For the sake of this class, for us to get through it, I'm going to show you guys how to add detail to one of them, and then I'm going to leave mine pretty vague. So like for these, I kind of let them dry, and then I came back with my bright blue and I added all these little details along the top edge. Okay, so I'm going to leave them like that. And then the way that I would add detail to all of these, take again your tiny brush or detail brush, and then get your hand up above where you're where it's dry, and then you would literally just like, it helps if your trees are still a little wet. You would just start pulling that pigment out to make some texture. Can you guys see how that's kind of bleeding out a little bit, but it's also adding texture? And then I'm going to define, while I'm doing this, I'm going to define the edge of my tree that's in the foreground a little bit more. Okay, so I'll do it on this tree too. So I just wanted to bring a little bit more detail to the top of that. That's how you can do it. Just like little squiggly lines. And then if you want to add the blue to it, if you guys try this again after this class, I would encourage you to try new colors everywhere. But if you add some blue, I don't know, it just kind of brightens them up a little bit. Okay, so there we are, all your little trees. They do dry a little lighter than you expect. So these looked like that. And then they'll dry looking like that. Okay, now we're gonna work on this tree in the foreground. So this guy. And I wanna show you guys this first one that I did. I spent a lot more time on this. So you can see all the different levels and the different gradients that I made under each layer of the tree, under each branch. This one does not have quite as much detail. We're gonna do one more like this, but I'm gonna show you guys how to add some of the detail and then you could do it later. So grab, you could grab a flat brush, or I'm gonna use my water brush again. I'm gonna start with the teal green. And again, I bet your water is still drying like mine is. So try and avoid it. Try and avoid it. And you're just gonna start creating layers. And these should be, again, super organic, you guys. I mean, essentially all you're doing, you're making a bunch of shapes like that, just one above the other.
Abby, a couple people are asking if you painted in the white of the paper or if you're just choosing to keep that white for the snow.
Oh yes, that's just all staying white for the snow. We're gonna add a little bit of blue at the end to give it some shading, but it's all white for the snow. So in the beginning, when we used our pencil to just draw those very organic shapes, we did that so that we would know where to stop our water. So you don't want the water to run into any of those white spaces.
Someone else is asking how you can vanish a hard edge.
How I can what?
How you can vanish a hard edge.
Vanish a hard edge, like get rid of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're meaning. I don't know if they mean to like blend it or.
Oh, okay. So if you're trying, so I love hard edges, you guys. If you have hard edges, keep them. They're beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing about watercolor. You can't really get rid of them. That's actually the cool thing about them. Once they're in your paper, they're dry and that's the organic lines and the organic shapes that show up with watercolor. So I would encourage you to embrace them. And as you practice more, you're going to learn how to control those. And at some point, you'll be able to create a hard edge like right along the bottom of a snowbank, for example. And then you'd have this like beautiful line that's designating that snowbank, but it's going to be a very organic line. So there's not really a good way to get rid of them. I would say embrace them. Is that a good answer?
Yes, thanks, Abby.
Okay, so I'm just gonna keep making these shapes. And guys, again, this is something like you could sit here, spend all day and make the most beautiful detailed tree. You could also just keep it fun and loose. And I'm doing this from a weird angle, so. Once your water dries, it'll be a lot easier to work on this. I just can't even put, like, usually I want to paint like this and I can't do that right now. Okay, so I'm working my way down the tree, right? Now, again, if you wanted to come back and add a whole bunch of little details, like little pine needle details, which I have on this one, essentially what you're doing is just taking these organic shapes that you're making, and then you're like pulling out very thin lines. So I'll use, you know what, I'll show you guys. This is one of the textured brushes that I have. You could just get it a little wet, and then you would go back up here and just start pulling that up. I'll show this to you in a second. Okay, so I kind of put my big wet blob down there. And then, Molly, can you see that? Like all those little tiny lines that I just pulled out. That's how you would add a whole lot of detail. We're not going to do it for the sake of time right now. But if you wanted to go back and do that, do it while these shapes are still wet, and then you can just pull the lines, the skinny little lines out, and you can make a whole lot of texture. So you're just going to keep going down your tree here. Okay. That's pretty good. Now, if you want to get, again, if you want to get super detailed, take some of that darker green that you have, and using a fairly thin brush. Again, you can use your super thin brush if you want. Go back in when this is still wet in some layers and just add a little bit dark, like a darker shade underneath there. I wish I could ask how you guys are all doing on this, but I can't. All right, and I'm just gonna add a little bit. I'm gonna go down to the bottom of my tree. As you're going, kind of define the edges of your tree. So like right here. Okay, I'm gonna call that a day. Again, this guy's got a lot more detail in him. This one has a ton of detail. So you guys can see the difference. Like if you spend a lot of extra time, you can really get some detail into these trees, or just leave it like that. Okay, so we're getting there. We're gonna add some detail into our water just to add some reflections of the trees. Now it should be pretty dry at this point. Grab the thinnest brush you have, so the finest tip. And I'm going to use that bright blue again. You're going to want to do, you're going to want your paper to be pretty dry for this, because if it's not, these little detailed reflections are going to run everywhere, and you actually want them to be pretty detailed. So at this point you want the hard edges. So I think mine's dry enough. I'm going to try to do this. Don't have too much water in your brush when you do this. It's literally just like adding little squiggles where it makes sense. But not too much. Like, don't overdo it with this part. It's just a suggestion. I'm going to define this line right there while I'm here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the, oh no, my water's still wet over here. It's okay. And then just because I want to, I am going to just define this tree in the foreground just a little bit so that it's not blending into the water so much. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. You could, if you wanted to at this point, if your water's still a little bit wet, you could get some bright blue and take it right along the edge of your snowbanks to define those a little bit more. So can you guys see what just happened there? It's literally, I mean, it just adds a little bit of dimension. I think the biggest thing with this is, like, if this is your first time working with some of these products, do not get frustrated. They take a while to figure out. I mean, watercolor in general is very difficult to control. I think that that's part of the beauty of it. And learning how much water, where to put the water, like how to control the water, that's the most difficult part. So if you're struggling with that at all, just keep messing with it. And I would encourage you to do as many organic paintings as you can, meaning like don't worry about the hard edges. Don't worry about penciling lines in. Okay, so that's it. For all those parts, we're just gonna add a little bit of the, what is this? The mid ultramarine. We're gonna use that for some of the shading in the snow. And I'm gonna use, I'll use this one. Well, no, I'm just gonna use like a simple wide brush. Doesn't have to be anything special. And the mid ultramarine that I'm talking about is this blue right here. We haven't used it yet. So I'm gonna get my brush a little wet, not too wet. And I don't want you to get too much color on your brush, okay? Just a little bit. In fact, I'll show you on this paper how light it should be, because you're just adding shadowing to the snow right now. So if I went really dark, it would be this dark. I don't want that. I want this. Like almost, you almost can't even see it. Can you guys see that? It's just like it's a pretty blue shadow. So that's what we're going for. And what you're gonna do is just add some shadowing. See, that was too dark. Oh no, that's okay though. So just like, I don't know, add shadowing wherever it would be. Like, you know, if you look out at a snowbank or a snowy field, there's always shadows in the snow. Definitely underneath the trees. That's it. That's all you're gonna do. I hope that shows you guys the dimension that I added. I feel like this camera on my iPad isn't showing as much detail as I wish it did. So now we're gonna do the same thing underneath these trees. So just a little bit of blue. Okay. And then under your front tree. So one thing about the Derwent Inktense paints that are the Inktense palette that's different compared to more traditional watercolors. Once they dry, they're going to be permanent. If you were using traditional watercolors, they would not be permanent. And if you had like a really dark spot right here, if you put water on it again, you could bleed it out a little bit with traditional watercolor, not all that much, but a little bit. With the Derwent Inktense set, they will not bleed out once they're dry, which makes adding shading like this at the end, it makes it really easy because then you know that your color's not going to bleed out. Okay, and then finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to my little snowbank in the foreground here. Okay, that's it. Now, if you guys have some acrylic white paint, so this is what I had in the list of items that I recommended getting for this. So I'm using acrylic gouache. You could also use any acrylic paint that you have. And you're gonna squeeze out a little bit of this, if I can open it. Okay, so we're gonna add our snow, and we're gonna do it by doing the splatter method, which is like my favorite thing to do with watercolor. Well, this isn't watercolor, this is acrylic gouache, but you can do this with watercolor too. Okay, so put a little bit out onto any palette. I'm using the lid of the paint pan set. Then grab, I don't know, again, any brush that you have. You could even use this guy that came with your paint pan set. Get it wet and add a little bit of water to your acrylic gouache. You're gonna have to get pretty much of this paint onto your paintbrush. And it takes some finesse because you got to figure out how to get the gouache wet enough that you can splatter it, but not too wet that you end up with like these massive drops of water on your paper. All right. Then get, I don't know, any other brush that you have. This is the easiest way to do it. Okay, so I've got some gouache on my paintbrush there. It is mixed with some water. And then make sure you don't have anything around your painting that you wouldn't want to get paint on. And then you're just going to go like this. I'll show you guys where this is going. I'm getting paint all over my computer right now. That's okay. So if you did a really dark sky, this is gonna show up beautifully. All right, I'm gonna show you guys what this is doing because you probably can't see it. Molly, tell me if you can see the details of those little white splatters.
You can see them, Abby.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
They look good.
And that's it. I mean, that would be the last step of this painting. Again, you want to make sure everything's dry before you do that. Otherwise, the white's just going to kind of blend in with everything. But that's it. Molly, I kept it within an hour. That's great. Okay, guys, here's the most satisfying part. You ready for this? Once it's dry, your painting or your painting can't be too wet to do this part. This is where you get to pull off the tape, and it's literally the most satisfying thing in the world. Guys, look at how satisfying that is. I'm gonna have so many of these little Northern Light paintings. Oh. And there you go. Okay. So I want to see, I don't know if there's a way that I can see what y'all did. Molly, is there a way to see those?
They can hold them up in their camera view.
Oh yeah, do that. Wait, here, I gotta switch my view so that I can actually see you guys. View. There's like,
Abby, someone's asking if you can explain how you did the elaborated tree. I don't know if they mean the big tree here on the left.
are you talking about the one in the foreground? It was, how can I explain that? I'll explain it by doing another little
So
layer.
can you do it on the sketch, on like your sketch piece, your scratch piece?
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Okay, so each one of these, so you want to leave the part where you would imagine snow to be on your tree, leave that white. And then I went like this. And I just started creating layers. Layers as in like one above the other, not on top of each other. So I started by like sketching out the shape of my tree, and this is literally all I did. I have a very sketchy hand. I should mention that. Some people have a very precise hand. I don't, and sometimes it works in my favor and sometimes it doesn't. I think for trees and organic shapes, it probably helps me out. If you are a person who like is very, very precise, I would challenge you to just like let your hand move, you know, like don't worry too much about it. So that's how I did that. Was that good? All right, now I want to see if I can see all your paintings. Gallery. Oh, okay, hold them up. Now I can see them. You guys, those look great. Wow. I'm like genuinely very impressed. Oh my gosh, these are beautiful.
If you guys want to follow Abby on Instagram, I'll put her handle in the chat too.
Wow. Wow, guys. I'm also surprised that I was able to show it like that on a virtual platform. So that's it. It's 2 o'clock, or well, it's 2 o'clock my time. I don't know what time it is your time. But thank you so much, you guys. I really, really appreciate it. Please do follow me. Ask me any questions. I would love it, like you guys can send me a photo of this on Instagram. I would love to see it. So thank you so much.